Well, hello again, friends. Glad to see you again. Richard Clinton here for another Fire Pit Conversation. Hope everyone's doing well. I'm just out here on a beautiful morning and just, again, listening to the birds again, and just kind of a joyous thing to come out here and just be able to kind of relax and sit in the presence of the Lord for a little bit, and just invite His presence into the day before the busyness of the day really kicks in. And so it's just a good thing. So it's always good to be able to come back here and be able to share some thoughts with you again. Friends, it's been a wild time. There's been a lot going on, even since just the last video I put up last week, of just so much chaos going on around this country, and with looting and rioting, and people distracting from others trying to protest and trying to share a message, and it's a sad thing to watch, and more lives lost, property destroyed, and all that stuff. And it's just it's soul killing. It's hard on the soul to be able to watch and take in all that stuff. And I think what's sad, a big part of the society and the culture that we live now is in this life of always on, of always being connected, with social media and with 24-hour news and all that stuff. We see everything that's going on across everywhere, right? Something may calm down here, in close to home, and then across the country something else sparks up, and we're glued to it again, right? And that's the thing. That's something that we have come to accept as a part of our life. But at the same time, our soul's only meant to take so much, right? Think of the times before all this technology and all of that. You didn't have instant access to what was going on in other areas. I mean, what was going on in your home and your community was enough, and that was enough for you to take, right? So it's been wild to see the news and see some of the narratives going on, and I feel for those whose businesses have been destroyed, and all those, and all of that, those who've been hurt in the midst of all this, and it's easy to let things, when they're right there in front of us, spark up anger and spark up frustration, and how we choose to respond to that is it honestly tells a lot about our heart, where our heart is, and what we look to. And friends, it's important in the midst of all this that we really try to pray for calm in our hearts, pray for the peace of Jesus to really infiltrate our hearts through all this, because it's only through Him. He's the one that matters through all this. Not I don't diminish anything with anyone, right? But that's what's sorely needed in this country. When I see so much hatred and so much anger and so much violence just continue to erupt across, and it's not just these situations. We see it. We've seen it all the time, in different contexts over the years. People being senselessly killed from in their communities. Officers being senselessly killed. I mean, the number of police officers that have been killed over the last week, is it's saddening to see that as well. It's hard to know what the right thing to say is, because at the same time, if you speak one way, you got a faction that's coming against you. If you speak another way, you've got a faction of people coming speaking against you. So there's a word that's really been coming to mind and coming to my heart this week that actually my boss actually spoke it to me in just the context of the work of the job I do now, but of learning each day to just do what's uncomfortable, and I think there's something important in that, because we can't hold ourselves captive to what everybody else thinks of what we say and do and feel and all that stuff. So that's within our hearts. That's something that we have to deal with and process with God. So that's just kind of where I am and kind of thinking about that. And I know I'm rambling a little bit these first few minutes this morning, but really the thing that's really that I'm really trying to press into is learning to really find where forgiveness comes into play, right? We've seen what happens, what has happened, and what happened in Minneapolis with Mr. Floyd was sad, was senseless, and it should have never happened, and all of that. And I pray, and I do pray that the true justice does take place and all that. But one of the things that really has come to my heart is what forgiveness looks like in the midst of all this, right? Even forgiveness for everyone, for the officers involved in that situation, and all that's going on, to everything else that's happening in the streets of our cities and everything right now, right? Forgiveness. Where does that come into play? Because that's something that's so lost. We're such a vengeful culture, right? It's so easy to want to go out and just take revenge, and then others jump in and make it with another excuse to step out and take revenge. Or just cause more utterness and more chaos in the midst of everything going on. And, something that's so vital in the midst of all this, and it doesn't diminish what happened, it doesn't diminish anything, is the idea of forgiveness, right? Forgiveness for what has happened, releasing what has happened to God, and allowing God to take control and step in and have His way and His say in it. Allowing justice to prevail in His sense and His timing, and I speak from that. I speak that honestly from personal experience, right? Over 10 years ago, we lost my dad in a car accident. He and two of his co-workers died in an accident in a commuter van when they were hit by another vehicle that caused the van to spin out of control, and my dad couldn't keep it under control. He was driving as the van had 9 people on it, lost control, rolled over, and him and 2 of his colleagues were killed in that accident. And that sent me and my family reeling. In a lot of ways, I was angry. There was so much anger and bitterness that filled my heart for a time, that I didn't know what to do with. Anger for what had happened, anger at the man driving the car that hit them, and all of that. Angry for having to spend hours and not being notified that of what had happened to our dad. When we were trying to call on all over, trying to figure out where he was, had no idea until we finally got a hold of the coroner's office, and they confirmed it. No one called us, and so it was a lot of little things that really angered and frustrated us, and through all that. And then the man who hit the van, he was eventually charged for that accident. He was charged with vehicular homicide and all that. And I remember the day he was in court. It was a couple years later that he finally, after some appeals and delays and all that, he stood and pled guilty to the charges and was sentenced to some time in jail. And I remember that day so vividly because me and my older brother, Rob, were there in the courtroom along with some of the other families in the accident. And we sat there and we watched this man who had been, who had a family of his own, right? I didn't know the man personally. I could see what this had done to him because I know he didn't leave work that afternoon heading home with the intention of hurting anyone. But it happened, right? And so justice had to be served on that side, and you know, and I think rightfully so. But at the same time, something that really came to my, especially as I came to really know Christ over the next years, following that, is what forgiveness really looked like. That I could still to this day see this man's face sitting there as I sat there in that courtroom, and we watched him just kind of pleading, but also trying to state his sorrowfulness to us, to the families of those that were lost. And it was heart-wrenching. But I remember it was in probably within the year after I really came to faith in Christ that I was sitting there, and I remember just thinking, I need to figure out what forgiveness looks like. I've got to figure out how to learn to forgive what has happened. And it took way longer than it should have, I think, honestly. And friends, I wanted you to understand something, that being willing to forgive what happened in any situation, no matter what it is, whether it's the death of someone, whether just someone just hurt you, or whatever it may be, being willing to forgive someone doesn't excuse what happened. I remember sitting there with my pastor and just telling him, it's like, I wanted to sit face to face with the man to offer him forgiveness face to face. And that's been a meeting that's been hard to coordinate, but either way, to know from my heart and between me and God that I've forgiven that man. And it wasn't to say that what happened was okay. It's saying that what happened mattered, what happened hurt. But now that I released that fully to God, that no longer has any control over me. And friends, the longer we allow things, tragedies in this world to control us, to have a say in the way we're going to respond and live in the day-to-day, the longer the enemy is going to have his grips on us, right? As a story of our lives, every day, it's this long sustained assault by the one who fears us and the one who knows who we'll become and fears that. And friends, he's going to do everything he can. The evil one's going to do everything he can to keep us from continuing to become the men, the women that we're meant to be, that God meant when he meant each one of us. And this is just another tactic of it, keeping you in a state of just absolute anger, keeping you in this state of fear, and all of that. It's what we've seen. The narrative of this year has been just that: fear and anger and chaos. These spirits of the evil one that have just infiltrated this society, of this world, in so many ways. And all that does is separate us from the trueness of who God is. You have to remember that. You have to know that if you allow that to continue to hold on to your heart, you keep yourself disconnected from God. And what God desires from each one of us is deeper union and connection with each one of us. He desires us to look to him, to be invited, to be a part and a present in every part of our days. And when you're out there, and when the anger overtakes you, it's hard to stay connected there, right? So we have to, in the midst of everything going on, in the midst of our sorrows, in the midst of our struggles and everything, we have to be able to find the joy that God has instilled in each one of us. You know, joy transcends everything, and we're told to count it all joy for all the struggles that we've had, right? That the bitterness, that the struggles, the pain, everything, all those things we can count as joy, because it helps us build for perseverance and builds our character, builds steadfastness and rootedness in our faith, right? It helps to build a genuine faith, as Peter said, when we can joyfully look through all these struggles and walk through these struggles, because in bringing God into the middle of all that, you know. I just, yeah, it's hard to know exactly what to say in the midst of everything that's going on, and that's just kind of where my heart is, and today, and as I look to this, what's happening, and so I'm going to share something. This has been something that I've been processing through this week. I've been really reading through Psalm 121, and this psalm has really helped me really process what's happening and continue to keep me grounded and looking to God through everything. Psalm 121, it's just one of the songs of ascent, and it's when as the pilgrims were making their pilgrimage to Jerusalem, and that ascent up that road, that the road that ran from the Dead Sea was like 1,400 feet below sea level, and Jerusalem sits about 2,400 feet above sea level. So you're talking about a 3,000 foot descent, and this was just a part of that. Those songs of ascent that they would sing on the way up. But I'm gonna read it here. It says, "I look up to the mountains. Does my help come from there? My help comes from the Lord who made heaven and earth. He will not let you stumble. The one who watches over you will not slumber. Indeed, he who watches over Israel never slumbers or sleeps. The Lord himself watches over you. The Lord stands beside you as your protective shade. The sun will not harm you by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord keeps you from all harm and watches over your life. The Lord keeps watch over you as you come and go, both now and forever." And as I share that, and as I've been processing that this week, of just remembering of how much the Lord is our protection, the Lord is our guide, the Lord is the one who's there with us through everything, right? And that's something that I've really wanted to stay grounded in the midst of everything that's going on right now, and not just in this week, because I mean, it's got to be every day, because we're inundated with things that overtake our hearts and our minds, and we can only take and process so much data. But just looking to the Lord and remembering that the Lord is the one who is with us. Our help comes from him. He's the one who is our protective shade. By day, by night, he's always with us, whether we're coming, whether we're going. And it's just remembering that, friends, and when you have that, when you have the peace of knowing the Lord is with you, right, it makes it easier to look with joy beyond everything that we see in front of us, beyond the chaos of the world. So where's your joy coming from? Where are you looking to? Are you looking to the world? Are you looking to Jesus? Because the world's going to tell you one thing. The world wants to tell you that you need to be angry. You need to go just all in. But justice in the Lord also looks like forgiveness, and it looks like one that is willing to look to him and allow him to have control and say over everything that's happening. And friends, that's my heart this week. It's been a wild time. It's been a wild time in everything. I mean, not just this past week, but from all the virus stuff, which is kind of quieted down a little bit, but we'll see if that picks back up with in the news and everything. But knowing that this world has a strategy to keep you focused in a way that draws you away from God and things that are important. So with that, friends, I thank you for joining me this week. It's been It's been an interesting time, but I pray right now in the name of Jesus that each one of your hearts can find the common peace that surpasses all understanding, that you can find Jesus in the midst of everything that's going on, that your hearts can stay focused steadfastly on Him, stay rooted in Him in everything, that forgiveness can be found in your hearts, because He forgave us first, so we must forgive. Remember that. So that's what I want to say. So friends, I pray that you have a wonderful week, and I look forward to seeing you back next week for another Fire Pit Conversation. Friends, take care. God bless.